think it's true that if you can see the gap in an industry, you see the greatest opportunity. Because that's what happened when we came to the United States.
Sure, that's exactly what happened. But more importantly, we were unemployable.
That's true.
So
completely unemployable, and probably always have been, because we want to do things our way. It's a good job we agree on what that way would
100%.
be. Yeah. Plus, when we arrived here in 1983, there was a 10.4% unemployment rate in the state of California, so no one was hiring anybody anyway.
That's correct. Nobody was hiring, and I arrived a couple of months before Jane, and I managed to secure a sales job at a skincare equipment manufacturing company. And
you were so excited to get a job. I remember you didn't really even know what you were being paid, which turned out it was like straight commission.
It was a straight commission, and nobody bought the products. So
the equipment was great, but it was so sophisticated, nobody knew how to use it.
So I was trying to sell skincare equipment to people who didn't know why they needed a skincare equipment.
That's right.
So when we arrived, Jane arrived 2 months later, 3 months later, and I said to her, we've got to work this out, because I'm trying to sell equipment to people who don't know how to use the equipment. So the first thing we have to do is we've got to educate them. Right. So that's kind of where this whole thing started, where Jane started.
Well, my first weekend here, there was a big trade show in Long Beach. And Raymond said, come to the trade show with me, and he's going to work the trade show. I'm going to walk the floor and see what's going on. And I'm expecting to see just mainly skincare and some hair. And what I found was no skincare, all hair, and nails was emerging.
Correct.
And I walked the entire floor and kept going back to the booth and saying to Raymond, who was working the booth, well, the reason you're not selling any equipment is, I don't know what's going on, but nobody is doing skincare. And so clearly there was either no skincare industry or we were missing what was going on. And we quickly figured out only 7 of the 50 states had a license.
Correct.
And there was no professional skin therapy industry.
Right.
So there's the opportunity.
So in order to sell the product, the equipment, what we decided to do is I convinced the management at Takara Belmont, the equipment company, to hire Jane on a one morning a month.
Yeah, Monday.
A Monday.
First Monday of the month.
Correct. To do a 4-5 hour education piece on doing treatments.
With the equipment.
Using the equipment, correct.
So it was like a demonstration more tane anything. So first of all, we were brand new in Los Angeles. Secondly, we hosted the class at the Takara Belmont showroom, which is close by here in Compton. And they had a mailing list of cosmetologists that they'd sold hair care equipment to, but not skincare. Anyway, we sent out an invitation and 70 people
replied,
and we were like
we
sold
only had 30
out.
chairs.
Yeah, they were like sitting on the floor in this little showroom. And I start doing the demonstration on the equipment, and what I realize is, before cell phones, they're photographing how I wrapped the bed, how I wrapped the client. And then they're photographing how I'm actually applying the cleanser and using the steamer. And very quickly it was obvious that everyone in the room...
There was a total lack of education.
Total lack of education. And we held the next one, and the same people came back. And I said to the one person, well, I remember seeing you here last class. I'm doing the same class again. And she said, I know, but I just got down how to wrap the client, and now I want to photograph how you're removing the eye makeup. And we realized there's this huge thirst for education to bridge the skill set gap between what was a 600-hour license training and the 2 or 3 year full-time training that was standard in Europe and much of the world. And we realized that if we could educate...
Right, and I sold a lot of equipment because when Jane explained to people why they needed equipment and what they were using the equipment for, everybody asked, how do they go about getting the equipment? Yeah. And of course, our equipment sales went from 0 to 100 within a three Monday classes.
Yeah.
So the company was very excited to have Jane on board to do the education. I was very excited to have Jane on board because I was on a commission base, and we sold a lot of equipment.
And I was very excited because they were paying me $100 a day and I was only working 4 days a month. So it was like winning. And then we realized the students had a thirst to actually learn the techniques. So we persuaded Takara Belmont to put in full suites, 6 suites of equipment. And we took a space in Marina del Rey, close to where we lived, in a 1-bedroom apartment. And we opened the International Dermal Institute.
That's correct. And we used the state board list
Yeah.
to canvass students.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, we actually started getting students from way outside LA. We actually got people from Northern California,
San
from
Francisco, San Diego, Phoenix, Nevada,
correct.
Las Vegas.
So we pulled from all over, and
Yeah.
the classes were an immediate success.
Yeah.
We had full classes from
With a wait
virtually the day we opened the doors.
Full classes with a wait list. And traffic was bad, so they'd hang out after class. And at 7:30, Ray would always say it's a good class if everyone's still there at 7 o'clock, and we'd order Domino's pizza and drink box wine from
That's
Save
correct.
on Drugs.
So that's how the International Dermal Institute started,
Yeah.
because the International Dermal Institute was opened 3 years prior to Dermalogica actually being launched.
Yeah, our intention wasn't to launch a product line. I mean, we
Well,
realized...
it was.
Yeah, we realized pretty quickly, though, that there was no American skincare product. The product that everyone was using were all European. And so the light bulb moment was, we should introduce a product to meet that need. And that product was Dermalogica. We're an education company with a great skincare product. We're not a product company that just started to do education. And that is, I think, one of the hallmark differences of Dermalogica. Our foundation is with the professional skin therapist and in education. And whether that's educating the therapist or the client, the consumer, we're educating online now, it's all about understanding the why we're doing what we're doing, and not
Correct.
just the how and the what.
So in order to launch this product, which we knew we wanted to do, we had to decide how we would go about it. And between us, I think we might have had $500 spare to be able to put together on this product line.
Yeah, about that.
So these were the days before you had private equity companies and...
We wouldn't have even known. First of all, we couldn't hardly get a bank account.
That's correct.
And we certainly couldn't get a credit card. So do you remember we had to get a Sears credit card, because that credit card was one of the best ones. You just paid it off right away, and then we built your credit score because we didn't have a credit score.
Right,
I mean, the
right.
whole thing seems crazy now. But we did it with self-repeated enthusiasm. And we would just keep saying to each other, this is such a good idea. Anyone we told, though, thought we were crazy.
Right. So we decided not to tell anybody.
So we stopped telling anyone what we were doing, because otherwise they would persuade us that we were mad.
So what we did is we put together every dime we could get, and the total amount came to, I think it was $12,000, $13,000.
Yeah,
And that's how we started our product line.
yeah.
So we relied on a lot of people who believed in us.
Family, friends.
And our first manufacturer of the product, actually Morgan Gaffney at
Gordon
Labs,
Labs.
he said to us, you know, I see many people come in the door, and they come in, we listen to them, and we make them some products, and then we never hear from them again. And he said, with you guys, I just feel something different about you guys.
So he made us the first batch of products, and that was enough for us to have as testers on the first trade show in 1986 that we went on. The same Long Beach trade show was the first weekend that I went when I landed in this country. But as Morgan agreed to make the product for us in this sort of pilot batch, we had found a chemist that could make the formulas
Right.
to what I wanted to have. Because Ray said to me, you said to me, can you do the briefs of the product? Can you write out what cleansers you would want? What more? I said, absolutely. I've got this dream scenario in my head. And so I want a product line with no mineral oil, no lanolin, no fragrance, no artificial color, no formaldehyde, no SD alcohol. And we went to...
We interviewed like 3 or 4 chemists, and they said we were crazy.
Crazy, and you can't make it. And if
It's
you're not
impossible.
if you're not going to use formaldehyde, you're going to have to use mineral oil, because how are we going to preserve it?
That's correct.
And we asked one chemist, well, how do you preserve food? Why can't we use food-grade preservatives? And he said, well, no one's ever done that before. And I said, but if it preserves food, could it preserve the essential oils, the natural oils, the botanical ingredients? And he said, it's interesting, maybe. And that was all we needed to say, okay, we're going to drive it. And we found one chemist that agreed to do it for us, and he did the formulations.
Right.
And then Morgan made the pilot batch.
Right, but this was in 1986, so this was 32 years ago.
Yeah, pre-internet, pre-anything. We barely had a fax machine.
Correct. So nobody was speaking about no fragrance, no lanolins, no color.
No, we were the first. Dermalogica, first of all, it sounded different. It sounded like a pharmaceutical product, which our position was it's a bridge between a pharmaceutical and a cosmetic.
Correct.
It was really the first cosmeceutical product in the market, because we had drug registration for the acne products and the sunblocks, and then we had cleansers and toner and moisturizers. So it was this unusual mix of 27 products.
Right.
Quasi-medical, and we were the first company to introduce a completely different, separate group of products that was only used in the treatment room by the skin therapist.
And the product was also not beautiful.
No.
The product was very simple,
serious and unique.
That was our payoff line.
Yes,
simple, serious and unique.
And we said Dermalogica, not for everybody, but perhaps perfect for you.
So that was the beginning of the launch of Dermalogica.
Yeah.
And we were very excited because people were very excited. The salons, the skincare therapists were very excited to be able to have their own line.
Yeah, it was like a revolution. I mean, we were also giving them a voice. It was fresh, and it was California, it was American, it was new, it was different.
And it was not being sold anywhere else other than through skincare centers.
Correct.
So they were very, very excited and very enthusiastic because they saw it as their product rather than our product that they were selling. Mm-hmm. And that was a big difference.
Yeah, and because of the classes, we were teaching them how to build their business, how to market their business. And we were teaching them simple profit and loss statements. How to manage their business in
how to sell retail,
which had never been done, which seems crazy, but most salons did not sell retail product. They were offering services
correct.
And a little bit of hair products, but they didn't have skincare products to sell. And so we were introducing this idea of 50% of your revenue should be in product sales and 50% in service. That's the most highly profitable balance for a skincare center, which is completely different to hair or nails.
Right.
And no one was talking about that.
Correct. And the ones that were with us from the very beginning started seeing what the benefit of selling retail was.
Yeah, we used to say, if you're not selling product to your client, it would be going to have your teeth cleaned and seeing the dentist and never brushing and flossing at home and thinking your teeth are going to be great 3 months later. They're not. And that stuck.
Sure, it was 101 retailing. It was they had never done this before.
No.
To them, it was a new experience, and it also benefited them from the bottom line. So they were very enthusiastic about it.
And the clients were coming back, and their skin had shown such good results because not only were they receiving the treatment, they were with these products that were specially developed for the treatment, they were also being educated on how to take care of their skin at home.
Correct.
And using the home care products that maintained the results. So our students were telling us that they were getting results unlike anything they'd seen before.
Right.
And it became this sort of idea of Dermalogica skin. And they would say Dermalogica skin looks different because it would look so glowy and hydrated. And it was because of this combination of the treatment and the products used at home.
Products used at home. And no lanolins and no fragrance and everything in the product. It was very different to anything else on the market.
There were no heavy creams. It was all light layers. And I have to just say, in 1986, when we launched Dermalogica, we launched with boosters to boost the product and serums. And in 1986, everyone told us, what the heck is a booster and what is a serum? Nobody understands those words. It's crazy. And I'm so happy now that boosters and serums are ubiquitous in the industry. And I remember when they were not. I just had to say that. I think because I'm a skin therapist, and I had always worked in salons and environments with a lot of other skin therapists, One of the things that stood out as I was teaching at the International Dermal Institute and then Dermalogica was so many of our skin therapists worked alone, and they worked in that treatment room and were not connected to a bigger sense of something else.
Absolutely.
And what they got when they came to class was this idea of being part of a community and a tribe, as they would call themselves, still call themselves. This idea of, you know, they used to say, we bleed grey, because they felt so bonded to each other. And we recognized that very early on.
It was a 50% education.
Yes.
And 50% was the bonding,
Yes.
and the tribal experience they felt about coming to one of our
Yes.
classes.
And we would say we've got to think of every opportunity to bring them back and bring them together.
Correct.
Every class, I would start out by having everyone introduce themselves, going around the room. And it wasn't because I had forgotten who they were, it was because I wanted them to connect with each other. Everybody took someone to lunch.
And then we had a Polaroid photograph of every single class.
Yeah.
And we put it up on the board.
Yeah.
And when they came back, they of course saw their photographs
Yeah.
on the board with all the other students.
Yeah. We would print out how many hours each person had studied, and they took a diploma after 100 hours and another after 300.
Correct.
We were even so bold as to have guest speaker evenings when we had very,
Correct.
under 100 students, and then Congress.
We had a congress in our first or second year of launch.
Yes.
And I think we had 60 people
Yes.
for 3 days.
Yes.
And
In a hotel
Right.
near the airport here in Los Angeles. And that grew to a congress every 2 years somewhere in the world.
Correct.
With over 2,500 attendees and
from all over.
from all over the world. And the magical thing about that was, as we were opening our training centers and around the world, not just in the United States, and having and hosting these congresses, everybody was coming together and feeling part of this global, worldwide tribe of change makers.
Absolutely.
And they realized we have so much more in common than the things that separate us. One of my truly greatest memories in my career was in Barcelona. And I could almost cry thinking about it, and watching our Israeli therapists dancing with the therapists from Pakistan and Lebanon. And then they were joined by our therapists from South Korea and Japan. And everyone in that open piazza in Barcelona, the rain started coming down. It was the evening event, and Ivor Gordon, who's our international sales manager, had these logoed umbrellas, and there was this sea of grey umbrellas, and everybody laughing and dancing in the middle of that summer night in Barcelona. And I honestly felt right there and then, this is so much more than a product. It's a movement.
It's a movement. And we realized very early that we weren't selling a product.
No. The product has to be great, but it
product
wasn't
has to be
about the
absolutely
product.
Great.
It was about so much more than the product. It was about the whole excitement of being part of something bigger. That created our culture. Even the name, Dermalogica, which when you thought of that name, Raymond, it was about skin, dermal. And logica, logical. It made sense.
The bond of the therapist being part of the growth, it was almost, the alignment is similar to how people feel about an Apple computer. When Apple launched and they had their Mac, people loved the Mac and they spoke about the Mac as being their machine, as their product. And Dermalogica was in a similar vein. It wasn't our product that we were selling them. It was their product that they were using and recommending to their consumers.
Yeah, exactly. It was a real sense of partnership. Right. And that idea of community and tribe is critical to the brand identity.
And we would have, every 2 months, we would have an evening where we'd have what we called a forum, where we'd bring in 20 skincare center owners, and they'd come in and we'd sit around a table and we'd discuss what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, and what their recommendations were on a go forward, and what they didn't like what we were doing. And it was a very open discussion.
Very open,
we
fierce conversations.
We were very transparent from day one.
Yeah.
Because we saw them not as customers, but as partners. And that was the big difference. And they felt they were part of the company.
The feeling in the industry before we launched was they were competitive. No one shared their secrets with anybody else. And we had these open forums where we would say, what is your greatest challenge in your business? And so we would problem solve together for each other. And that sense of camaraderie and togetherness was the glue that our competitors would say they cannot get into a Dermalogica salon. They could not break into our salons because the sense of this loyalty and camaraderie was so deep and so focused, and we focused entirely on that. We did no advertising.
Our packaging was based on our professional packaging was based in a dark room.
Yes.
And they said to us, I'm working in this room, and if all your products look the same, I'm going to grab a cleanser instead of a moisturizer. Right. You need to differentiate between your different products.
The caps have to be flip caps so that I can keep contact with the client while I flip open the product and then put some of it on the back of my hand. Everything was designed thinking about that human connection in the treatment room.
Correct.
It was all about what's our pillars, which is education, personalization, because there's no cookie cutter treatment. It's one treatment that's different every time. And the product, when it's taken home by the client, the boosters and how you layer them and mix them, and then human connection, which was the point of difference, of this idea of the relationship that we had with the skin therapist and the relationship that they had with their client. That literally took the product home and then used the product themselves. So this whole idea of this alchemy of the product and human touch was extraordinarily new and fresh. And it was the piece of Dermalogica that so many of our competitors missed.
It was an interesting time for us because there was nobody in the marketplace that really understood the therapist as well as we understood them at that time.
Exactly. And we were teaching them every day in the classroom. So we really had our nose to the coal face, so they say we knew exactly what was in front of us. And we were opening training centers because those training centers became the campfire.
Meeting places, the campfire. And what we did is we had a training center in LA to begin with. That was our first training center. We moved up to San Francisco. We opened one up in San Francisco. And then we continued to open training centers throughout the US. And I think after about 5 years, we had 15 to 18 training centers throughout the United States. And these training centers, they had two purposes. One was the education of the therapists in the product, so they could understand product and skin. But as important was the bonding exercise, that whether it was in Chicago or in Arizona or in Denver, it gave them a place for these therapists who worked on their own every single day to come together in a meeting place and talk about what they were doing with other therapists.
Our competitors were willing to go to the salon and teach in the salon because they didn't have training centers. Right. We were insistent that the therapists come to the campfire because by being together with other skin therapists, that was the glue that was cementing the relationship.
Absolutely.
And it was so much of a movement because here we had this product, the name was different, Dermalogica, it was skincare, skin made sense, and we banned the B word, no beauty. We were not a beauty product. We were about skin health. We were not a cosmetic product. We were actually about skin therapy. We were not estheticians. We're skin therapists. It was this whole idea of transformation of the skin, of bringing your skin to its optimum level of health and condition, and bringing your business to its optimum level of health and condition. And that was our mantra. Yeah.
But we made a point of trying to make the Dermalogica therapist a very different type of animal to any other therapist in the marketplace. And it went as far as our trade advertising and all the different routes we went to try and distinguish the Dermalogica therapist from others.
Yes,
And
it's my industry and I'm taking it back. We're not pretty. The moment your skin changed forever, our products, your touch equals heaven. I mean, we were constantly reinforcing this idea that this was a different, not just a different product, not just different education. This was a different proposition, a different movement, a different relationship.
Correct.
And we lived it, ate it, slept it, drank it, dreamed it.
It really started happening as soon as we opened a training center. And in the UK, we must have opened 5-6 training centers very quickly.
We also had this stealth movement that most people in the industry missed, because we were opening state board schools as partnership
Correct.
schools. And in the United Kingdom, we had 1,000 colleges that used our product in their training. So we would open the state board schools as partnership schools, so that we were really focusing on people coming into the industry. We would go on trade shows, and the other exhibitors would tell us, like on a Monday was always student day, and they'd say, hide your samples, hide your product, because the students just are going to want everything and there's no business there. We thought the opposite. We said the students are the ones we have to really we have to cultivate hearts and minds. So give the students the samples, let them use the product. They're going to be the future of the industry. And that's how we approach the partnership schools as well in the UK and of course in the United States. And even in South Africa, for example, where the training is some of the best in the world, and now there's a 4-year education program where that last year is at the university level. And still, the South African therapists, like therapists around the world, want to be part of a collective community together.
But we did this in 50 countries, where we insisted every agent, every distributor of ours followed the program 100%. They needed to come to LA, and we indoctrinated them in our system and what we did and why we did these things. And when they went back to their own countries, they started doing exactly what we were doing in the US and the UK.
They taught the classes the same way. I mean, we developed a teacher training program extensively so that we could really train our teachers to go back to their respective markets or countries and replicate the exact model that we had developed here in Southern California. And it worked. And we realized we were building a brand. We weren't just making a product. And the brand was bigger than the product. The brand was about this relationship and this bonding and this connection and this feeling of, even though you may be working in a single room in Auckland, New Zealand, know that you are part of a tribe of tens of thousands of skin therapists around the world that are connected to you, because we're all on a mission to change this industry that we love and shift it from being about miracles and secret ingredients and beauty and pampering and luxury to being skin therapy, wellness, fitness. We belong in the healthcare arena, not the cosmetic arena, and center point of all of that is the well-trained skin therapist connecting with the client and personalizing every treatment and every combination of product.
Correct.
So it was that education, human connection, and personalization right from the beginning. And that is the core to the culture.
The whole idea was the bonding exercise, because we could have sent them videotapes or cassette tapes of exactly what we were talking about. But we realized very early that the bonding stage and the understanding of what we stand for and the culture was so critically important that we had to get them together. And our educators, we had educators who would go out and visit each market and spend a couple of days in each market training them not only on the product, but on the relationship building, on the ingredients, on everything that we did. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the point of difference between ourselves and most of our competitors trying to open an international market.
Yeah, every detail in the classroom. I mean, our teachers were the most highly trained in the industry, because we were teaching everything from how you're laying out the trolley, to how you're laying out the bed, to how you're opening the class, to what the language that you're using in the classroom, to the empathy shown to the students in the classroom, and the encouragement and the motivation.
And gave them the confidence.
And gave them the confidence, because there'd be this moment where the student would be learning a technique that they'd been challenged by, and suddenly they got it, they had it, and you see this aha of like, oh my gosh, I can do this, and I think I'm really good at this.
Exactly.
And I think I could make this my career. And when that started happening, that cascade, then all you've got to do is arm them with product and arm them with the classes going forward, and you've just ignited a time bomb, because that is just going to explode and ricochet around the world, and that's exactly what happened. When we would travel internationally, one of the greatest thrills we would have in growing the company was when we would see the product through a salon window at some point, and we get so excited. And now the great thrill is you see where we've taken the professional skin therapist out of the treatment room. We used to say, come out of the treatment room, come into the light. But we've taken them out of the treatment room, and now you see skin therapists working, whether it's in medical offices, whether it's in airport concourses, whether it is in large retailers that are offering services or face fits. I mean, you see that effect around the world in all these different incarnations. And in that success, the core of what made the company successful is still there. This sense of connection, this sense of empathy and kindness, this sense of relationships and connectedness, and always taking a moment to onboard somebody, to welcome them into the tribe. And it is a tribe. And this, I think, level of authenticity of what you see is what you get, and you're going to be part of this, and we go forward together. And if each one of us is not successful, then none of us are. And now we have the distinct opportunity of speaking much more directly to the consumer, directly as a company, which is fantastic on all the platforms that we use to do that. And now the consumer, the client, feels part of that as well. And I think just never forget that we have a great product, that's a given. I mean, do I think our cleanser is the best in the world? Of course I do, because it is. But it's not just about the product, it's about all the people.
So very early on, we realized that it was critical that new employees, new staff members joining our company had to be onboarded immediately. And they had to understand why we were different and what we stood for.
We needed true dream believers.
And I think that was a great part of our success. We had people on board who absolutely believed in everything we were doing.
And stayed with us for a very long time, and our distributors for a very long time, and it truly has become, of course, a family. Dermalogica
Absolutely.
Tribe became a Dermalogica family.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been good.
It's been a very exciting time.
Welcome.